Okay, guys, so we're going to go ahead and take a look at what colors Corot is using here. All right, we're going handheld here. Hopefully I don't make you sick jiggling the camera around. Um, so all these shapes on the sketch are blobs of paint, basically. When I looked up the images of Corot's palette, there was one that was a photograph of his dried palette, and then they had investigated and found the actual pigments, where the locations where they were laid down. Okay, now, so I didn't want to take their images, so I just sketched, made a little scribble of their findings and recreated it there, and then put the same colors, or as close to the colors that I could source onto my palette here. Okay, and I did have a little painting session with this. I did a landscape where, you can see I mixed a little bit of a blue sky. And so what I'll show you here is, first of all, you'll see there's no white on there. Um, Corot used lead white, and I did actually get a tin of it, but which I was using, and it was in here, which corresponds to the white here. Okay, so the white was up above his thumb, um, and so I put my white there, and there's a big space for it because you're going to use a lot of white, but I don't have it here because I didn't want to open it if I wasn't going to use it, because it's toxic and it's expensive. So if I'm not using it, I'm not opening the tin. And you can imagine what white looks like, right? Most painters today, probably your paint kit has titanium white, which is fine. When you get more into painting, you can get into the different whites, and if you become a real color junkie. But for now, the thing about white is a lot of painters will vary on where they put white. Do they have it in the corner up here or the corner over here? And so I thought it was interesting. I seen that Matisse did this as well, was where they have the white here, and then the yellow is way over there. And um, it makes sense because you want to keep those bright yellows clean, so you keep them away from all these dark, dirtier colors here. And if the white gets into the yellow or the yellow gets into the white, that's the least bad thing, I suppose, compared to the darker colors contaminating them. And also, when you're doing a landscape, it depends on the landscape, but if you were doing Corot's landscapes, there's not a huge bunch of yellowy leafy greens in it. You're going to use a lot of earth tones, okay? And those earth tones are going to make so many colors that are in a landscape that look natural compared to the bright ones. All right, so yeah, so looking back onto the sketch here, then he put his white there above his thumb, and then he goes into the other yellows that are like the earth tone yellows. And so that's what I've done here as well. So there's Naples yellow here, then it goes into yellow ochre, and then that's raw sienna, then there's burnt sienna, and then I had a color, it was Old Holland light red, that I wanted to try out for a painting, so I put that there. Okay, that wasn't one of Corot's colors though, but the other ones were. And then what's interesting is he gets into the vermilion here, which vermilion isn't made today because it's toxic. Well, actually, Michael Harding does make it. I'd love to try it. It's extremely expensive, but I know that it's meant to be an amazing red. And I know, like, the painter You and You Glow, when they said that they were going to stop making it, he went and bought all of it, like that they had in the shop near him. And so I know there must be something to it because he was like a genius. Technically, he's one of the more technically minded kind of modern painters. Very smart guy. But anyway, you're going to use cadmium red or cadmium red light for your vermilion. That's your bright red. So it's interesting he goes from his earth reds into the bright red. And then his dark red, the next one over, is, um, so on this, that's his vermilion. Then he has a rose madder here, okay? So rose madder, again, not made today. It's not light fast. It's also toxic. Um, so I have alizarin crimson. There's issues with the light fastness of that as well, but um, it's a really good color for a dark red. I like the way it behaves in mixes, so I use it, and I think with alizarin you only really have to worry if it's direct sunlight, and so being in Ireland, I think my paintings are safe enough. Um, so then he starts going into his dark earths. So he goes from his bright yellow, white, earth tone yellow, earth tone reds, bright red, dark red, and now he's going into his dark earths, okay? So the ones he has over here, there is, what's that one? I can't read my own writing. What does that say? Prussian. Oh, okay. I think that's what that is. Yeah, because he has his Prussian blue in two places. Um, I thought, yeah. So that is raw umber. Okay. So he has raw umber, which is really like a green to me, um, but it's very dark. And then we have Castle Earth, which is even darker. Um, Nowadays, it's known as Van Dyke Brown, and that's a really great landscape color. Um, if you ever watched Bob Ross show, you know he used Van Dyke Brown. The Old Holland Van Dyke Brown, I think, is great. That's what I have there. And then Corot didn't have black on this palette that was analyzed, but he did use it because it says in the National Gallery website that he used it in when they did investigations of his mixes. And so that is my black because I use that to make certain greens, not that green, but I'll tell you about that one in a moment. So the other thing is where he put his greens is really interesting. Is like, there's a green living here and then a green living up here. So Corot was known for mixing his greens, but he did use two greens. At least they were on his palette. So there was Veronese green. They don't make that anymore. I think that's toxic. And then emerald green. Okay, they don't make that anymore. Um, so I milled that one myself. Okay, and so, well, you wouldn't want to actually mill real emerald green. It has arsenic in it, and is like the most toxic thing ever because it actually released. It's something like it releases the fumes even after it's dried or something like that. So I don't know how anybody survived making that stuff, but anyway, I just mixed up something to put on the palette to show you where Corot put his emerald green. The Impressionists I thought used emerald green, and Van Gogh used emerald green too. And it's meant to have really great qualities like the vermilion and like the rose madder that aren't reproduced by any of the substitutes today. Like I tried mixing it there just for fun, but it's not a emerald green. Emerald green is like, it's weird. It's a bright green, but it's not yellow, but it's not really blue because blue greens tend to make you go towards like turquoise, where it's more of like a gray cast to it. I don't know how to describe it, but anyway, there's no emerald green anymore. But what you should see is just when you're thinking of mixing greens and you think like, oh, I'd rather just squirt them out on a tube, it's so much easier, and it seems inconvenient and like a lot of work to mix your greens. What you should do is leave a space like that where you just know that those greens are going to live up here and down here, and mix up some greens as if you were making, and then leave a pile of a basic green there, a cool one and a warm one, something like that, to, and then you can use that as a base color just like you use a blue as a base, and you start mixing with it, okay? So if you're thinking like I have to constantly mix greens as you go along, like yeah, you will, but you can start off with a green that you've made and just put it on a, make a pile of it to put on your palette, and then you have everything there without having to buy tube greens, because a lot of the tube greens aren't going to look as natural as the greens that you mix, okay? Like I've said in another video. I highly recommend going on to the National Gallery website for the London one. It has a really great program on it where you can, it's just like a great experience where you can go onto the Corot paintings and zoom right in to see every brushstroke. They're photographed in such a way that you can use this thing. It's set up like an app on the website, and it'll zoom right in, and you'll be able to see. The guy was just like the Michael Jordan of landscape painting, okay? And seeing what he does will, you know, on the one hand, it'll inspire you because it's so amazing, and on the other hand, it'll probably make you think like, wow, maybe I should just give up because um, it's it's just so good, you know, what he's done. But anyway, I really hope you enjoyed my little demonstration there of how Corot lays his palette out. And again, the New Wave palette that takes its cues from the way that the Impressionists held their palettes, like that on the forearm, is really comfortable. It's really durable. Definitely worth the money. And I think, you know, you have to support people that are making things like this, because if they don't, you know, I was happy to spend the money on it, because if they don't survive, then all you're going to be able to buy is cheap crap from Amazon, you know, and we're headed that way, especially with art materials, you know. I know like people who own art supply stores and independent ones are all shutting down, you know. So this is a really good product. What I also want to try out is their tabletop palette. They make one that comes in gray, and I often paint on a gray background. Like there's something I'm going to paint on because of the Irish skies, and so I really think that would make an ideal tabletop palette for me to do my extra mixing. Like I hold this in my hand and then I can do my mixes on the table. And also I really want to try one of their pochade boxes, okay? For someday I'm going to brave the Irish elements and go out plein air painting it, once I get better at making uh, paintings inside, and maybe I'll make some videos of those. So hope you enjoyed that, and now you know Corot's palette, man, so go paint like him. Good luck.